Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia. Welcome back to another faction preview video for the Fates Divided DLC, and today we'll be taking a look at the other bandit faction available in the 200 start in Zhang. Now, Zhang's start in 200 is probably the worst one for him, and you will find yourself in a very difficult situation, and on top of that, there are also no missions or objectives concerning Zhang at this start date. So you're not going to get any in-game mission dialogues to give you rewards or give you objectives. It's kind of a free-for-all where you kind of decide what to do, similar to Nobel in this start date, which is kind of a shame. And if we take a look at the map, you find yourself in a very difficult spot where you're surrounded by Yuan Shao and his vassals. Now technically this is probably slightly easier than Zhang's start because of the tools you have at the start of the game, because you do have your son coming of age right away now that the new coming of age is at 16, and also you can probably have an easier time defeating some of these vassals, whereas Zhang is surrounded by technically, Cao Cao and Liu Bei as her only neighbors. And the objective is very similar. Try to find some outside diplomatic faction, since you're diplomatically landlocked in the beginning. That makes sense. You can't contact anyone for a mercenary contract until you break through and meet up with potentially Xiahou Dun to the west. That's probably the easiest approach, and we'll take a look at those options once we hop into game. You still have the same faction mechanic, or the lack of faction mechanic. You pretty much have your Black Mountain units, you have your special building, which you cannot build at the start because you don't actually own a settlement. You own farmland, I want to say. We can double check that, but you own a county. So you can't build your faction unique building, but it also gives you the freedom of whichever capital you conquer first will automatically become your capital. So you do have a lot of freedom in moving capitals cheaply, and you can maybe make a dash for migration tactic. It's gonna be difficult just because if you take a look at the map with the new blockades here, the only way you can get to somewhere like Shuofang, which would be a really good start for bandit, is to fight your way through Gao Gan's faction and then cut through the mountains in Xihe over here and then sail up to Shuofang. It's definitely doable and probably be a very safe start for you, but getting through Gao Gan's faction might be trickier than you think, just because with the way the mountain's set up, either you have to go through the path or you have to go north and go through Taiyuan, which is where Gao Gan would recruit most of his unit. So maybe there will be a strategy developed to how to get out, but it's just not going to be an easy start. And with that said, none of the faction mechanic has changed. You still have some very nice bonuses on yourself as the king of the Black Mountains. And we'll also talk about historically what's going on with him at this time. He's probably situated a little bit too far out compared to history. He should be retreating deep into the mountains during this period. But regardless, this is probably a more interesting start. One of these more challenging start for the game. And let's hop in and take a look.
天道不公，公孙瓒兵败身亡。大王，您也被赶出了黑山的容身之处。奸贼袁绍仍然对您紧追不舍。他的意图是一统中原以北，之后再与曹操一决雌雄。大王可选择南进，托庇于曹操，也可趁曹操疲于应付袁绍之际，窃取他的一块领地。大王，群山一向待您不薄，此次进山或许能逃过一劫。等到恢复元气，可以拿高干小试牛刀，夺回您的家园。目下，您已是四面楚歌。我等去设法逃出袁绍的手心，再徐徐图之。
Alrighty, so as we hop into game, that flyby, pretty good explanation of our situation. Historically, we were chased back into the mountains by Yuan Shao's forces, not out of the mountains. But regardless, Zhang Yan, your isolation has left you bereft of allies, and your notoriety as the King of Black Mountain has painted a large target on your back. Back into a corner, enemies close in on you from every direction, with Yuan Shao bearing down on you from the east, Gao Gan pressuring from the west. The situation is dire, and your options are decidedly limited. Cao Cao may be your only chance to gain a powerful ally, and with Yuan Shao as a common foe, you might have a chance to earn his favor. Yet if the heady sway of ambition calls, there's an opportunity to be seized. The war between Cao Cao and Yuan Shao distract them both, providing you a chance to boldly steal their lands or land from underneath them. A purest risk for one in such a precarious position, but the greatest risks often yield the greatest reward. Ultimately, the path forward is yours alone to decide. The fate of your people depends on your choosing. Okay, so despite Zhang Ye getting beat all the time, if you track from 190, during the alliance against Dongzhuo, the Black Mountain Bandits had their height. They came out of the mountains, they sieged and raided the city of Ye. They went as far as Dong. And then when these warlords that were in the alliance started going back to their territories, they started getting beat all over the place. Chased out from south of the river, chased back from Ye, chased back into the mountains. Lu Bu even worked with Yuan Shao for a period to fight them around Changshan area, push them way back in. And the Bin province really, administratively fell under control of Yuan Shao and his vassal Gao Gan. And we're stuck in the mountains. But even though you're stuck and getting beat, Zhang Yan had about 1 million people living under his control. So we say people because they're not all, bandit warriors. Some are families, some are just civilians living under his jurisdiction. That's still a large amount of force to, eradicate. And Yuan Shao never was able to fully eradicate Zhang Yan. And during this conflict, Zhang Yan just, stuck in the mountains to lick his wounds. And when Cao Cao finally not only beat Yuan Shao in the Battle of Guandu, but later on destroyed the Yuan children and took Ye, Zhang Yan made a call, thinking that he no longer wants to be a bandit out here and that he could have a chance to join up with Cao Cao, or the government technically. He traveled himself to the city of Ye to surrender his Black Mountain Bandits to Cao Cao, and Cao Cao took him, and Cao Cao gave him the title of the general who pacifies the north. And he got a marquis title that eventually went to his son, and he lived out the rest of his days, in luxury. Not bad for a former Yellow Turban that, was part of a failed rebellion, became a bandit, pretty much was a successful bandit. I mean, he's one of the biggest bandit groups in China at this time. Not very successful in terms of conquering land and making something of that, but still the sheer size and growth and the ability to, harass settlements made him quite a force, and later on he got a title for that, so good for him. You don't start out with any special items. You do still have your armor, of course you can't take that away from Zhang Yan, with the fatigue immunity, which is always lovely. The skill tree is alright. Having the top row is better than, actually it's debatable because he got the bandit skill tree now. They updated it for him, so having mending obviously is great, but the bottom row is good too, so it's debatable if this is better. Normally for Han generals this would automatically be better, but in this case maybe not. Some of the key bonuses you have to know is that for your faction you don't have any forest penalties as long as Zhang Yan is the leader, or prime minister or heir somehow. 50% post-battle loot income, that's quite nice as a way to make money through fighting. You obviously have the chance to trigger ambushes on offensive fights for every fight. That's something that makes Zhang Yan very powerful, especially after they fixed the range capabilities in ambush fights. You also have this +3 rank for all Bandit Mountain units. And speaking of Bandit Mountain units, we can probably pop over here, take a quick look at what we have. We have the Black Mountain Marauders, which we actually have one already. They have the typical, raider traits, immune to scare. I'm just trying to check. They're also resistant to fatigue, but that's from one of your skills, I believe. Right, there's nothing too crazy in terms of having stock. Causing scare is the common trend of all Black Mountain troops, I believe. And then we have this unit here, which looking at the symbols, yeah, also nothing too crazy. And then finally the Black Mountain Hunters. These are your hybrid units, and if we take a look at them, I don't want to actually recruit one, but if we have to, it doesn't matter for this showcase. Just remember that we had 2,000 at the beginning. They have Raider, immune to scare. Yeah, it's immune to scare plus scare on them. And then the resistance to fatigue is from the skill tree, and then this force penalties from faction-wide bonuses. So nothing too crazy in terms of the unit. They're decent, they're not super strong. Triggering ambushes with them, charge down, cause scares, kind of your calling card. No faction mechanic really. You do have a very interesting faction unique building where you could, you know, assuming you find a capital, you could end up building something that can be specialized. This Yellow Turban relations, it's a nice experiment if they revamp the Yellow Turban factions to be more interactive with other subcultures, but right now I just don't see a reason to go for that. This is probably the best one. Give you 2 extra administrators or underlings here, improve relationship with Han factions, which is most of the map. That will probably benefit you the most. If you don't care for that, you're interested in just fighting, diplomacy is not your thing, or you're doing something like this is Total War, then this would be your go-to building right here. 3 extra armies, more post-battle loot, and looting from settlement, which is post-battle loot after conquering a settlement, a siege battle. So that's really everything that makes your faction unique, which is not a lot. But you do have the new bandit mechanic. Now we had talked about some things that are even, you know, worse. We start out with quite a few generals. We have our wife, who is not a bandit. We have our son, who is also not a bandit. So this probably has to do with the fact that these characters were created before the bandit revamp. Even Zhang Yan and Zheng Jiang was not having the bandit skill tree for a while. They redid them, but I believe the wife and the son got ignored. Now, you could argue that the son eventually becomes a marquise under the Wei Kingdom, therefore he's a Han. You know, he didn't live a life of a bandit. And the wife could just be a regular person. Sure, I can understand that argument. But then the problem arises where they're not in your family tree, which is really awkward. Because the Prince of the Black Mountain is not linked to you. Now, it doesn't really hurt gameplay because next in line can be given to anyone for bandits, which is good, but also not good. And there are positive out of this, just, you know, by accident. Zhang Feng becomes great as an heir because he will have access to the 4 Han skills that can give you good bonuses for being an heir, also good authority. So he would definitely be the one you put as heir right off the bat. And his bonuses is a carbon copy of Dad. Same exact bonuses. Therefore, you will now have 50% post-battle loot income. You'll have plus 6 rank for all starting Black Mountain units. And then with him, you also have understanding. So another rank up. I don't think Zhang Yan has anything that can compare to that. Therefore, 7 is, I mean, it's already a lot, right? You get plus 9 and you max rank because you start with 1. If you get 10, it's max rank. So plus 7 means all your Black Mountain recruits will start out at rank 8, which is actually a huge bonus for you doing nothing, right? You just put him as heir, which you will do anyways, and you're all set. Now the bad news here is, since this is technically not your wife, you have to spend money to marry her. Hopefully this gets fixed, right? Hopefully the family tree is just the oversight, it gets fixed, and then you have your wife. She's not very useful, but if she's your wife, you wouldn't have to pay her salary for one, right? I know it doesn't sound big, but that's like another 300 income that you would have gotten because families, you don't pay salary, which is not cool here for Zhang Yan here. You're paying extra for your wife and your son, and they're also extra unhappy because of this. So you could also have her as a marriage target with a divorce, given that there are very good characters to steal now. Both Cao Ren and Cao Pi are excellent characters to steal, not to mention some of Yuan Shao's sons. So even though you're at war with Yuan Shao, but I'm just saying, having female characters in general. Ma Chao's also single at the start of the game, and all the kids, you know, become of age earlier, so there's a chance to steal them earlier. You know how we always complain of saying Sun Ce it's hard to steal because Sun Jian always dies in the 190 start, and then he becomes faction leader. Well, now 16's the coming of age, there's a really good chance to actually grab Sun Ce before Sun Jian dies. Therefore, you can have the cavalry bonus, and then Sun Ren coming of age would be on turn 77 instead of 87. Don't ask how I remember these dates. Sun Ren's just very important, at least when the game first launched. Anyhow, back to us. Our other two generals are bandit characters. There's nothing special about them. There's nothing too historical about them. You can definitely banish them if you want, especially after the fact. If they are made family, banishing them wouldn't hurt the satisfaction as much, and you should be able to keep everyone happy, especially if your son's going to become your heir. A lot of authority on that as well. That will give you at least 2 sets of extra income. You could also fire your wife for, right now she's not even your wife, for 2,400. Keeping your son is probably the only person that's important. The good thing about Zhang Fang is that he doesn't need to pick up meditation. He has stubborn, therefore he's ready unbreakable. So he's a great, looping general, as we say here. But you don't have to use him as looping, but unbreakable is just good in most circumstances. And Zhang Yan also has that. So this, like father, like son, we're greedy, we're stubborn, Father's a little bit careless, which is kind of weird for Zhang Yan to be careless, but we're determined. Together we'll give 10% chance to ambushing, which is great for us offensively as well. So those are good bonuses that are available for the faction. You probably don't want to defend this too hard. It is a farmland. It's not worth that much. You do get it at level 2, so you get the nice retinue here. You're most definitely going to probably summon your son into the army, and then start marching this force at either Zhongshan's livestock farm, which is pretty easy to take, and then just slip through this pass and start running. You don't have to come down Taiyuan. Xiahou Dun's army will take the toolmaker on turn 1 all the time for the AI, and then they should start fighting. Depends on when you get here. You might be able to get through here without getting attacked, and then just sail for Shuofang. And being 4 counties is a great build-up for bandits, because your bandit income is pretty much available in all county type. There's no specialized income. Therefore, the more county you have, the more income you have. And also, you don't have a lot of key buildings for the regular settlement. You see you're missing a bunch. So if you say have a harbor, which Shuofang has, then you have 2 sources of commerce, whereas most places can't find that because there's no county income, unless you have like tea. There's very specialized ones, but since you're not close to anything like tea, Shuofang would be probably the best thing you will get. On top of that, you get the animal tamer for horses and the horse pasture for discount for cavalry unit. And then the other advantage of us starting up here compared to, let's say, Zhengjiang starting down in the Central Plains, is that our reform tree is going to look a lot better. The bandit network, similar to Zhengjiang, we get 6 skills, which means we got shafted because we did the math. Even if we assume each of these are 8-turn reforms, 6 times 8 is 48. We're starting in year 200, which is 10 years away from the 190 start, and that means 50 turns have at least passed, and we somehow researched less than we should have. And on top of that, we can't research on turn 1 right now, which I feel is a bug. Something that I have let the developers know, because usually for research factions you can research right away. You don't have to wait for seasons, and here I don't see a research option. I can't click on any of them on turn 1, but assuming that you can, then what happens is you have easy access to these 2 skills right here, reforms right here, and they give you the 30% campaign movement range, which is very, very helpful. And also you have access to a bunch of really great cavalry units. Therefore, you can probably go out, not only take control of the horse pasture here, but also build your little cavalry force. There's no one to disturb you. All this is unclaimed. Anding, Shuofang, and I think parts of Jincheng are all deserted. So you can have a pretty safe build-up. You don't have to concern yourself with, say, Dongzhuo sending Lubu up here in the 190 start for a lot of the bandit migration tactic. The river is all blocked up here, so no one can sail down to bother you, and you can clean out Hansui and Mateng and establish yourself in the northwest, and build yourself up that way. you can join in on one side of the war with Han Sui and Ma Teng as well. Maybe join Ma Teng's side and mercenary contract against Han Sui and then flip on him later. Or if you want to stand and fight, you can, but you would still want to go west a little bit. You want to meet Xia Houdun over here so that you can sign the mercenary contract with Cao Cao to fight Yuan Shao. That's probably going to, make you some money for a war that you're going to fight anyways. So that's pretty much it for Zhang Yan's start. There's not much to say. He is probably going to get his last bit of shine here. I think in the future DLCs chapter pack, Zhang Yan's probably going to start in Cao Cao's faction. Or, I don't know, you can have a vassal bandit faction in the north that you can't annex. Because I think you can vassalize bandits, but you can't annex bandits because you can't confederate different subcultures. So technically, as the general who pacifies the north, maybe he has some piece of land here and is loyal to Cao Cao. That could be an approach. Or just be a general under Cao Cao. Both are probably fine. He doesn't do anything, significant historically beyond, his bandit days. He gets the title, live out his good life. You ask a bandit to take care of bandit situations, they can find a way to take care of it. So yeah, this is Zhang Yan's faction. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!